Good evening, everyone. My name is William Hemsworth. You may know me from my channel, Bible Catholic, also on the Four Persons. With me is Richard Pettis, John Benko, and Eric Hansen. As you may see, I am the only one on camera. That's because I am the eye candy of the Four Persons Network. Just playing around, guys. Today we are going to be talking about the crash, and I called it the crash because there was a documentary about it on Netflix, and it's a crash that happened in 2022, and it talks about basically what happened to Mackenzie Shirilla, and there's some other characters in there, but I'm going to let these guys take it away because they are much more knowledgeable than I with it. So Eric, I'm going to give it over to you if you don't mind, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it. Um, yeah, I've been following this case since pretty much the same day that she was convicted. And it was courtesy through a TikTok video, of all things, that I saw this young lady, who we all know now as Mackenzie Shirilla, reacting very shocked, with fear and kind of confusion as far as being found guilty of these pretty heinous crimes. And the text across the screen basically said this woman was just found guilty of killing her boyfriend and one other man and thought she could get away with it. And I thought that was very, very unusual, considering how small she is. Very petite woman, about 5'4", 100 pounds at best. And my first thought was, I wonder what kind of firearm she used, because I hadn't heard of this. The only other piece of information on that video was um, her name, and so I Googled it, and that was the start of the rabbit hole that I went down. And the first average results is something that you would probably imagine, and that is local recaps from the day-to-day activities from the local media there in Cleveland. Day one of the Mackenzie Shirilla trial, day two of the Mackenzie Shirilla trial, and so forth. Then, probably 8th or 9th, 10th result down, there was the video of the crash itself that we have all come to know, of the vehicle speeding past the building, speeding past the camera, and you can hear the audible crash. And I watched that video, and I was, of course, horrified by what I saw. I was like, wow, that's very powerful footage. However, I look at it from an investigator standpoint, because that's what I do. Is I looked at it and I'm like, there has to be more than just this. What is it? Because this camera footage, while it shows a lot of detail, it's not showing us the detail that we need really to convict someone. It tells us the date, it tells us the time, it tells us what the approximate weather conditions were, meaning snow covered, wet, from rain, foggy, that type of thing. It shows us the road conditions. Was there standing water? Was there ice? Things of that nature. What it shows also is the windows are black, and that is involving the lighting conditions that took place at that time. And I look at it from a very specific point of view, and I'm like, okay, I can't even see the rear seat headrests. So how are we for sure know what's going on inside of that car? Because the last time I checked, we don't send people to prison based upon reasonable assumptions. We send them to prison based upon proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, like I said, I went down the rabbit hole. I reached out to the county coroner, or not the county coroner, the county prosecutor's office. And I said, I want to have everything that you have on this case: video footage, body camera footage, reports, etc. I made the same request with the city of Strongsville, just to make sure that I got the same information, and nothing wasn't missing from one. Because if you get it from two different sources, you're probably going to get a pretty good coverage of both. So I wanted to make sure I covered my basis on that. I then obtained a copy of the bind over hearing trial, or not trial, hearing is what it is, in which the prosecution presents evidence to a juvenile court, because this did take place when she was under the age of 18. So by law, it has to go in front of a juvenile court judge, and they have to have a hearing on it. And then I also have a copy of the transcripts from the actual trial as well. And in addition, mixed in with all of that information, there are a lot of red flags that, as a person with investigative experience, I thought were missed. For example, and I keep seeing this online a lot, of people saying, "Oh, she practiced the route 7 times." No, she did not. People are misreading that in the detective notes. The information on where they're getting that from is based upon cell phone data download from Mackenzie's phone. And it said the phone number pinged to that area, not to the specific street, but to the area 7 times over the span of several years, including years where Mackenzie wasn't even old enough to have a learner's permit, let alone drive. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Something is amiss here. Mm-hmm. As an investigator, I would have requested from her cell phone provider a full amount of data on her phone, such as give me all the latitude, longitude data for a full calendar year before the crash, because that would really give me and anyone else a really good understanding of where they're at on a regular basis. Because it's really 4 pieces of info: date, time, latitude, longitude. You have those 4 pieces of information, you can create what is called a pin map. And that's basically you drop a little pin onto a map, and that says, okay, that person was there at that time on that date. And if it shows her driving down that road, say back in March on a regular basis, in May on a regular basis, then you know it's not an obscure road for her. It is something normal. But he didn't do that. And I was always curious why. It's just one of those things where I'm like, something's not adding up here. Then when I also saw the text messages between Mackenzie and Christine Russo 2 weeks before the fatal crash, where Mackenzie alleges Dominic grabbed the steering wheel and tried to spin out the car. Okay, why was that ignored? Follow-up text message from Dominic and Mackenzie the day after. You have Dominic apologizing to Mackenzie. Why? And the nature of the text messages show they're still talking about spinning out the car and how Dominic might be injured, the first one injured, or worse, which I'm like, again, makes no sense. Why would a person who is so fearful, because you can see that in the text message, if someone is so fearful about crashing a car or being involved in a car wreck, why would they intentionally ram their car into a building? That makes 0 sense to me. It's sort of like a person who's allergic to shellfish, like I am. Me running into Red Lobster and going, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and have some lobster tail, and you know what? I'm going to have some crab legs. No, that'd be a very fatal idea for me. So,
Right.
It doesn't. Just the idea doesn't make sense. And then for them to claim, oh, she did this so she can go and have a modeling career. Do you have any idea how risky it is to do that? To crash a car where you yourself may become physically disabled or disfigured and then go have a modeling career, that also excuse didn't seem to make much sense to me. So, um, so yeah, it's one of those things I just did not understand. And um, John and I have been talking about this case. I know John is on the road right now, um, and just the route itself, um, where where Mackenzie went to, what does that look like? And John is fortunate enough to actually show us in real time what it looks like. And just before I got on here, I looked at the transcripts from the court just to refresh my memory. And they calculated the time difference from when Mackenzie made the turn to when the car crashed, and they marked it at 59 seconds.
Okay, William.
Okay.
Yep. Let me jump in right here. So you all have seen the movie, The Crash, and you see that right turn that Mackenzie Shirilla makes off of Pearl Drive. As soon as this light turns green, which is right now, I am now making the same right turn that she made. First thing that you're going to notice is this road. I'm sure you can hear how bumpy this road is.
You can see it.
Can you hear the bumps? I'm going 20 miles an hour, William, and this car sounds like it's on a stagecoach. And at this point, we're at about 10 seconds now, right, Eric?
Yes.
So at this point, the police say she was doing 100 miles an hour down this road with these bumps. There is no way. You're talking about a car that is 1,000 pounds lighter than a police cruiser, okay? And they claim that she's doing 100 miles an hour down this section of the road, and their timeline doesn't add up. Because if she was accelerated immediately to 100 miles an hour, she makes this road in 28 seconds. And as you see, I'm not going to make this road in 28 seconds. Now, the location that we're coming up to now, on the left side, there is a tap and die, entrance to a tap and die shop, Atlantic Tool and Die. This is where I believe she began to accelerate. And I believe she did so because somebody making a left turn into that facility was stopped here, and Mackenzie shot the car around him to accelerate to go around the car, and the shoe became wedged under the steering wheel. Now, just to give you some idea how little reaction time, you saw me going 20 miles an hour. Look at this, William. We are already at the Plitco building. This is where the collision happened. That's how little time elapsed at 20 miles an hour. How little time would have elapsed at 100 miles an hour? Those three poor kids didn't even know it hit them before the building was on top of them. Eric, do you agree with that summation?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just seeing that in real time here, yeah, going much faster, you'd be left essentially with just a few seconds, and that is, what are we going to do? How are we going to slow this car down? And then to physically take the action necessary, the reaction time to take some kind of action to slow the vehicle down. You have
now
virtually no time.
The other narrative that I want to shoot down, William, of what the police actually testified in the prosecution testified in the case, is that she went straight into the building. Okay, that is absolutely false, and I'm going to prove it right now.
So that's what the movie said.
Around.
So, okay.
What's that?
I was saying that's what the movie said.
Yeah, the movie.
Okay, I'm curious.
The movie said she went straight into the building, and I'm now going to turn around again, and I'm going to prove to you that that's false. Okay? Because So I'm now going to turn around again, and I'm going to be facing the building, okay? And I'm going to stop the car, and I want you to look straight ahead, and then I'll show you what straight in the building would have been, and then I'll show you where the car actually impacted. I'm waiting for this vehicle to go by me to do this. Okay. So I'm coming down to the end of the intersection. Put the camera out straight, Christine.
Okay.
Okay. Straight into the building would be through that tree with the white ribbon on it. See it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. To the right, you see a Plidco sign, right?
Yes.
Behind that Plidco sign, to the right and behind that Plidco sign, you see two new sections of wall. Okay?
Yes.
That's where she hit. And she hit on the window side, which means that car turned almost 90 degrees before it hit. There was incredible evasive action. In fact, the data recorder in the car registered a right turn of 142 degrees evasive action to try to avoid a collision. It also registered someone manipulating the gear shifter. So there was evasive action by Dominic and by Davion to try to avoid that collision. Now, the officer did say he believes that Dominic and Davion took evasive action. What he doesn't say is that the reason that Dominic and Davion took evasive action is because Mackenzie was incapacitated. She was laid out on the seat, and that's how she was found. She was found pinned beneath the dashboard, okay, on her side. And I'm going to turn it back over to Eric. Eric, explain to the audience why she didn't just flop down on the side like that just before impact, and why her injuries prove that at least 5 seconds before impact she was in that position.
Can we
And
hang
Eric,
on? Can we hang
before
on
you-
a second, Eric?
Yeah.
I want to point something out.
Mhm.
I read the Wikipedia article again today,
Mhm.
just about 45 minutes ago, and it said that the car hit on the passenger side door,
So it
or on the
had,
passenger side.
it had a front impact with a passenger side bias. So let me explain what that means. It hit on the front bumper, but it was on the passenger side portion of the vehicle. So it was probably most likely the impact point was right on the headlight portion of the passenger side of the vehicle, because everything got smushed up on the passenger side.
Okay.
There is damage that does extend all the way up to the firewall and just a little bit of the door. But and I have to go back to the crime scene footage, just to double check. But that's where the impact was. It wasn't just like scraping against the passenger side wall or passenger side door, and that was it. It was on the front bumper, and just because of the momentum and the speed, it was on the passenger side, kind of right where that headlight would be on her car.
All right. Eric, if I can interject one more thing real quick. I want to revisit what we were saying before, because me and Eric independently determined where we believe that the acceleration point was. Without talking to each other, we came by our own calculations, came up with it. And as I recall, Eric, we were within a couple of 100 feet of each other.
Yeah, based upon where you were saying and what I was believing,
Was very close.
It was about 120 feet
And
according to Google Maps measurement.
Yeah, here's how we came to that conclusion, William. I entered the police hypothesis into AI, into Grok, which is, as you know, is an AI search agent. Okay, and I asked the Grok search agent to assume the prosecution's theory that she made the right turn onto Prospect and immediately began accelerating to 100%. That's what they said in the movie, that she immediately pressed the accelerator 100% to the floor and maintained that speed the entire way down the road. Now, if she had done that, that proves intent, obviously. But there's no evidence that she did that. Okay, so I asked Grok if she did that, considering the acceleration time of a 2018 four-cylinder Camry from 35 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour, considering that acceleration time, give me the total eclipse time in seconds before that car reaches the end of the roadway, which was 3,700 feet that we just went. And Grok returned a figure of 28 seconds. Okay? So the actual time that was eclipsed from the time that she turned that right turn until the time that she made it to the end of that roadway was actually twice that, was actually 56 seconds. Okay? Which means she was going half as fast, average speed, as they claim. So their guess is not only not correct, it's not close. That's 100% margin of error, which, Richard, with your legal background, 100% margin of error is outside comfort zone, isn't it?
Very much so.
So I then asked Grok to recalculate the same scenario, but give me a point of acceleration. Give me a delayed point of acceleration in which the vehicle passes the camera between 50 and 60 seconds, which puts us right where we need to be. Okay? And Grok gave me 1,700 feet. Okay? Which means that vehicle passed the first 1,700 feet at 35 miles an hour before accelerating to 100 miles an hour. Well, if Grok is correct, that 37 feet basically places the vehicle exactly where me and Eric said that the point of acceleration started. So our theory with our point of acceleration exactly fits what actually happened in the car, while the prosecution's timeline is off by 100%.
Okay. Is there
Anything
anything in any feedback from the vehicle that may show that, or is that something that's not possible to get?
No, the feedback from the vehicle shows what? I think it's 4.75 seconds is all it shows, right, Eric?
Yes, it showed. It was 4.82 seconds. What it said. It was 5 seconds or less actually of data. And all it showed was that the vehicle accelerator was fully engaged. The brake was not activated. The seat belts were engaged on the front seats, and there was that sharp right-handed turn, roughly, I'd say within 10 feet of the wall is where that. So obviously not enough time to make any kind of a course correction there.
Yes. Now let's talk about the cameras.
I'm sorry, what?
Well,
John?
can we talk about can we go to the brake really first? Because you said the brake wasn't activated. Is there any reason why it wouldn't be if they were trying to evade?
Because the shoe.
The shoe? Was it like pinned behind the brake? Is that what you're saying?
The shoe was wedged between the brake pedal and the gas pedal, which was forcing the gas pedal to the floor and preventing the brake pedal from being applied. Well, and now they claim the shoe was an after effect. I don't believe that. And I have a very solid reason for not believing that. You know why I don't believe that? Because prior to the Mackenzie Shirilla accident, there were 4 fatal accidents involving 2018 Toyota Camrys, all the same cause. The molding, the floor molding, getting caught on the shoe, causing the accelerator to be stuck to the floor. That was the cause of 4 fatal accidents before the Mackenzie Shirilla accident.
Okay.
I believe that's what happened.
Okay. Yeah, and sorry to interrupt you all. I was just curious about that. So go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say about the cameras is there are two cameras that are shown in the documentary. There's the camera that is, and for those who are watching on our website, point A on the map that I marked there. That's right where that first turn, that first right turn she made, that you saw me make, off of Pearl Road onto Progress. All right. The next camera is on the south face of the Eurofins building, which is the very last building on the right side, and the camera was on the south face, meaning you literally saw the car crash into the building. Okay. Well, there's 3,700 feet between those two cameras. Okay. In between those two cameras, I guess about 900 feet earlier, right, Eric, is the Parma Movers camera.
Yes, roughly 900 feet. I'd have to do
And
some measurements again, but yeah.
We included video from that from that camera in a link on the website. And when you look at that video, you can see that that car there is going faster than 35, but it's not going 100. That car is going about 60. And Eric, a professional investigator, okay? Eric is a professional. He does this for a living. Eric, estimate the speed of that vehicle past the Parma Movers building.
Based upon my calculations, it was around 74 to 76 miles an hour.
74 to 76 miles an hour.
A lot slower than what the police said.
If the car began accelerating at the Atlantic Tool and Die Shop, then by the time, and you can see this laid out on the map, Atlantic Tool and Die, which is the C on our map, marked with the letter C, then by the time it reaches D, that's about the speed that car would be at. It would be at about 70 to 75 miles an hour. Okay. And then by the time it gets to F, which is the camera, E at the camera at the Eurofins building, it is at a top speed of nearly 100 miles an hour. So again, their scenario doesn't fit what the camera footage shows. Now, interestingly enough, they left the Parma Movers video out of the trial. Isn't that interesting? And they left it out of the documentary too. This is what Richard, I believe this is what you were talking about evidence that was not included, that was omitted, that kind of points the other way. Am I right?
Very much so. You know, they left out every bit of evidence that pointed to any theory other than their own. And that's why I told you, excuse me, that the crash was really one-sided. It presented the prosecution side, but never really Mackenzie's side.
Yep, that's 100% correct. I would agree with that, Richard. And people have asked me numerous times, to the point where I could almost say this in my sleep. They're like, okay, Eric, if you know so much, how would you have defended this case? Well, first of all, I would have brought in a neurologist to talk about Mackenzie's medical diagnosis, which she was diagnosed with a medical condition called POTS in 2017, November of 2017. So I would bring in a neurologist. I would bring in a pediatric doctor to discuss that type of thing. I would bring in my own accident reconstructionist. I wouldn't rely on the state. The state's trying to get my client into prison. So why do I want to rely on their evidence? I don't. I want to provide a counterpoint or a counter argument. And then I also want to bring in my own ASE certified, preferably an actual Toyota technician, to review the vehicle. And this is one thing I do want to make sure that anyone who's watching this, I'm sure that we've all seen the still photos of the car just sitting there in a clump of grass, next to a fence, and the thing just looks like it's completely torn to shreds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we saw in the news reports of this case. It's been on multiple documentaries, and people are always going like, my God, how did she survive when it looks like that? Well, the thing is, the car from a standard, or from a before the firefighters got to it, it was mainly intact from the firewall all the way to the rear of the trunk, to the rear trunk and bumper area. The reason why it looks like it's been torn apart is because it has been torn apart. Firefighters, when they're doing automobile rescues, they don't pull people out of the cars. They disassemble the car around the occupant or occupants. And the reason why is you don't want to injure the person any further.
Mhm.
So, for example, when I saw that the police were actively trying to pull Mackenzie out of the car, my medical training that kicked in that I've had, I've received EMR or emergency medical training before, so which is one step below EMT. When I saw and heard that, I was like, a shudder went through my body, because you don't know what kind of internal injuries that person has. So I know your heart is in the right place by trying to get him out of the car, but please don't, because you don't know what kind of neck injury or spinal injury a
Right.
person might have. If you're not trained to rescue somebody in that situation, just do the basic. Make sure you have the open airway. Make sure the person's breathing. Make sure that they have good circulation, and that's it. Get the professionals out there who know how to stabilize the head and neck, how to use a backboard. All of these tools that paramedics use. Allow them to do their job. Just make sure the person still has an open airway and that they are, that type of thing. Obviously, in certain situations, that may not be the case. You might have to get the person out of the car in order to perform CPR. Okay, fine. You're choosing the best of bad options in that case. So,
Eric, if I could interject for just
yes.
a minute, I want to go to Richard specifically for this
Mhm.
next point, because I think this is unbelievable what happened here. Richard, you've spent what, 3 decades in the legal profession?
Yes.
So let's talk about conflict of interest. And the prosecution entered into their case that threats were made, that Mackenzie had made threats that she was going to crash the vehicle. Okay? The only source of that threat, of that statement, uncorroborated, with no audio backup, no corroboration, no witness of any kind, the only source of that was a convicted felon whose name was Chris Martin. And that convicted felon was living in the home of Christine Russo, mother of the victim. And she was his former attorney. So she was his place to live. He couldn't find another place to live because of his record. So she took him into her home. So she was his place to live, and she was his former client. Okay, Richard, how is that not a conflict of interest? How is that not a huge conflict of interest? And would you have, if you were a judge, would you have dismissed his testimony as unreliable, especially if it's uncorroborated?
I might have if my last name wasn't Russo. But as a general rule, yeah, that's pretty much not going to be allowed. I mean, he doesn't have a reputation for telling the truth. I'm not calling him a liar. I'm simply saying he doesn't have a reputation for being truthful.
Right.
And he
had a compromised position.
Yeah, very much so. If he doesn't say something that helps her, he could find himself out on his booty.
Yeah.
So, Richard, I'm going to add a little bit more detail here.
Okay.
Mr. Martin, he was arrested in 2017 on firearm charges, specifically carrying a handgun without a permit and for driving around town in a vehicle with a handgun on his hip instead of it being properly secured in the vehicle in accordance with state law. So he's arrested for these charges because, as you are well aware, the criminal law proceedings are not over and done with in 30 minutes like a pizza. It can go on for quite some time. And so through continuances, things spilled over into 2018. Now, in 2018, according to the docket, he failed to show up for court on 3 separate occasions in which the presiding judge issued a capias warrant for him. Now, for those people who don't know what a capias is, it's basically another commonly used term is a bench warrant for failure to appear. Call me stupid. I'm not a legal expert. Call me stupid. If you fail to show up in court and a judge says you're getting arrested for failing to show up, it's sort of like the court's way of saying you're not trustworthy. Am I wrong?
Exactly. You're exactly right.
So he already has a tarnished reputation, but now that I mentioned that, he probably even has a more tarnished reputation. He could be a great guy, someone you might want to go have a drink with, but as far as honesty, I'm not willing to believe him, especially when he does not come to the police station in a timely manner. He lived roughly 2 miles away from the police department. He doesn't show up until 3 months after the crash, in which he gives us this wonderful tale of what transpired on the 17th, July 17th, 2 weeks before the crash. He provides us with zero supporting documentation or evidence to back up his claim. There's no audio recording of this alleged threat. There's no video and audio recording of this alleged threat. There are no independent third-party witnesses the police can interview that can corroborate his
and Eric
statement.
and the text messages that were actually provided by the cell phone provider actually contradict his testimony. There's documented evidence that actually contradicts his testimony. Is that correct?
That's correct. And everyone has ignored that up until very recently when the Netflix documentary came out. The family of the deceased, Dominic Russo and Davian Flanagan's, and I just want to make sure I'm very clear to this. My heart goes out to their families.
Yes. Absolutely.
They should still be here. However, maliciously punishing a lone survivor is also not appropriate. So I just want to make sure I'm very clear that I do feel for them, but at the same time, this seems sort of like that if you prick us, do we not bleed? Wrong us, do we not revenge? Type Shakespeare type thing.
Well, I'm gonna stir up some feathers here a little bit, Eric, because I want to address one last point, and that is that I echo everything that you just said. My heart. While I'm here in Strongsville, I think we're going to stop by the graveyard, say some prayers by the gravestones, because obviously, our thoughts and prayers are with the family. However, there has been a little bit of an effort to kind of sanitize Dominic, to kind of lionize and saintize Dominic. Dominic was into some bad stuff, okay? And the feds were closing in on him because he was in on some bad stuff. And Eric, isn't it true that federal investigation just kind of went poof and went away after those drug charges were pinned to the bottom of the charges brought against Mackenzie, and that federal investigation just kind of vanished? Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's the appearances that went away in about mid-October, and there are other providers out there who are also been talking about this, but they're on the more of the victims, of the crash victims side, trying to portray Mackenzie in a bad light, where they actually showed Mackenzie and her father in mid-October talking to the police because Mackenzie felt threatened by one of Dominic and Davian's friends. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to tarnish his reputation, but she took his presence and his actions as a threat, including, you're going to go to prison, you're for manslaughter, haha, we got you, that type of thing. Mackenzie's still in a wheelchair. She can't defend herself. She can't walk away, that type of thing. And there is an exchange in which Mackenzie's father does become quite heated with the gentleman. And I think as a father protecting his daughter, it's understandable. Do I agree with everything he said? No. I would have been a little bit more, let's say, diplomatic about the situation.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show the amount of stress that Mackenzie and her family have been under since this whole thing took place, as well as the stress on the families of Dominic and Davian as well.
Yeah.
They're all thrust into the national, or actually I would probably say international spotlight, and none of them asked for this. And it's just very, there are no winners here. Let's just put it that way. And the people who have asked me for my opinion, because I know I support Mackenzie, they said, Eric, do you think that Netflix documentary was in her favor, or if not, whose in favor was it? I said, I can tell you who exactly it favored. It favored Netflix. That's who it favored. It didn't favor the families at all. Was it kind of middle of the road reporting? Maybe. It certainly was a lot more middle of the road than others, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it probably still had a skew against her a little bit. Not as bad as the others, I will say that. John, I was just curious if you could do me a real quick favor, since we have, where are you located right now in comparison to the intersection?
I'm at 1949. So hold on, she's going to put the phone back on the. Let me pull back out again. Where did you want me to go?
So there was a one of the things that came up in this case was Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davian. They were actually heading to a grocery store that they frequent, and I was just curious.
Allison Superfoods.
Correct, and I was just curious at how much time it would take to get there from basically the Progress Drive, Alameda Drive intersection to that supermarket.
Where is
the reason why? So it's Westwood Drive and Pioneer Trail or Road. I gotta look it up real quick.
Well, so her intention was to drive down Progress, turn left on Alameda, and then go to down to Westwood, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to do that right now. While I'm doing that, there was another point that I wanted to bring up, and that was that the prosecution's case was based almost completely on the nature and character of Mackenzie Shirilla. And they painted her in a really bad light. She's a brat. She's uses drugs, does all these irresponsible things. If you're trying to make the case that Mackenzie Shirilla was not Citizen of the Year, I'm on board with that case. When people say, "Are you for or against Mackenzie?" I like what Richard said when I posed this to him. I'm for the law. And whether or not you think Mackenzie's a bad person, whether or not you think she could possibly have been capable of doing this, the only relevant question, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, is did the prosecution prove premeditated murder beyond a reasonable doubt? And the prosecution says yes, and I say that dog don't hunt. What do you say?
I concur 100%, John. They didn't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. They proved it with circumstantial evidence, including the words of Mr. Martin. And if I'm not mistaken, doesn't he have a nickname that is not the best?
Yes.
Yeah, the hench.
Hench Martin, which is short for henchman, which
Yeah,
last time I checked was a job description for a James Bond villain, but that's just me.
Not very complimentary.
No, it's
No,
not.
not at all.
So I'm at Westwood Drive now, so that should give you some idea of the timeline that we're talking about.
Okay, that was 1 minute and 14 seconds, and then you would take a right.
Well, that was 1 minute and 14 seconds at 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
So, all right. So I'm taking a right, and the point that where we're talking about hench, and we're talking about it, not being the most complimentary nickname. Let's also, when Mackenzie sent the text message to Christine Russo that said, "You better come pick your son up. He just tried to crash my car." Christine Russo didn't say, "Oh, no, my good little boy would never do that." She said, "Oh, just calm down. Hench is on his way. You're overreacting. Hench is on his way." So
Yep.
she never disputed the fact that her little boy.
Sorry,
I'm
John.
at
Are
Prospect
you at
Road.
Yep. Are you at Prospect Road? It would be a left-hand turn,
Left-hand turn at Prospect Road.
and then it'd be go 100 feet and turn right, and you'll see. I think it's a meat store now.
So
Yeah.
I think to Eric's point here, William, is that the idea that someone going to this destination would go all the way down Royalton and all the way down Westwood, they would add about 1.5 miles to the trip. Why would they do that when you could do the little cut through?
Mhm.
It only makes logical sense. I would do it 10 times out of 10. And when you pulled up the map from point A to point B to Allison Superfoods, it gave you Prospect and Alameda as the result, did it not, Eric?
Yes, it did. It gave me 3 options to take.
Sounds very
Option. So, and then I think you're passing Smitty Foods there.
Yeah.
Yep. So that
This
blue.
is where she was headed.
Yep. And then as you drive down, I see you're heading south there. You were actually going to come to Royalton Road.
Which
And
is,
then-
ironically enough, where our hotel is on Royalton.
But if you continue just a little bit further south, you will actually come to Lund Road. Lund Road is the street that Mackenzie and Dominic lived on.
So if she was going to Allison Superfoods and then home, Prospect and Alameda is the right path 10 times out of 10.
Yep, I would say it's a very reasonable direction of travel based upon what I know of the address. I was given three options to take. One was a very out of my way trip down Royalton and then up to Allison's.
Yeah.
Another one was to take Abilene, I think is how you pronounce it. But that was at a 4.9 mile distance. And because Google has a tendency to choose the shortest route, 4.8 miles is the route that Mackenzie drove that morning.
Now, the other thing that Richard brought up that I think is worth amplifying is the judge's name. The judge had the same last name as one of the victims, and her and his mother, who was also his attorney defending him in this drug trafficking case. Now, from information that we were given by an independent source in the know, a source I'm not at liberty to reveal, but someone who's intimately involved in this case, told us that when they asked Judge Nancy Russo, if she was related to the victim, she said, quote, "not by blood," close quote. And that Christine Russo, the prosecuting attorney, who was a prosecuting attorney from the same law firm, used to bring her kids to court, in Nancy Russo's courtroom, and the little children referred to Nancy Russo, Judge Nancy Russo, as, quote, Aunt Nancy, close quote. Richard, once again, back to you. How in the world is this not a conflict of interest?
Well,
that's what I was thinking.
Conflict of interest, and that's the whole thing. It's a serious conflict of interest, and somebody really needs to look into Judge Russo, and maybe an ethics complaint is necessary.
Warranted.
Persuaded, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
So
You've been talking about church, okay?
that's all I have. William, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking the same thing that Richard just said. How would that not be a conflict of interest? And did anyone raise any concerns at the time?
Amazingly not. Oh, and the last thing, the most obvious thing that we didn't talk about, Eric, Eric and Richard can both speak to this, and it was the first conclusion that all three of us came to independently. We all three came to this question independently, saying, wait a minute, why was this not a jury trial? Why in the world did they choose a bench trial? That doesn't make any sense. And it turns out that Mackenzie's lawyer strong-armed her into that. She wanted a jury trial. The family wanted a jury trial, and he strong-armed them into a bench trial. I'm going to say, I'll speak for myself, William, in saying that you pick any random jury of 12 people and that see this case, and I'll lay everything that I own down 3 times that they're not going to get a unanimous 12 people verdict of guilty in this case.
Absolutely
Richard,
not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not in the legal profession. I'm a teacher. I'm a theology nerd. But if something is to be done with beyond a reasonable doubt, shouldn't there be a jury trial? Shouldn't there be like a mandatory thing?
Well,
It should be.
it should be in a case like this. And I really think that all murder trials should be mandatorily a jury trial. However, by the same token, oftentimes judges overlook things that a juror might not overlook.
Right.
Yeah, they might fixate. A juror might fixate something on a little bit more emotional level versus legal level type thing.
Right.
I would agree with that. And Richard, I want to get your legal expertise on this question.
Okay.
Based upon the personal relationship of being a former prosecuting attorney for Cuyahoga County, which is the same county that prosecuted Mackenzie,
right,
being a former candidate for judge, and I'm referring to Christine Russo here, being a former candidate for judge, and a practicing defense attorney in Cuyahoga County, would one or more of these be reasonable grounds to have a change of venue to get it out of that area and into something more um, neutral.
Only to the extent that she could not have gotten a fair trial in Cuyahoga County.
Okay.
You don't just get a change of venue because you know the judge.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just get a change of venue because you're a former prosecutor or current defense attorney in the county. There has to be such publicity, really, pretrial publicity, that a jury could not do anything but find you guilty.
Okay.
And you couldn't get a fair jury. So when it's a bench trial, change of venue is likely not going to be the case.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't have that legal expertise. That's why I asked that question. So thank you for asking it or answering it for me. I appreciate it.
The bill's in the mail.
Thank you.
Now, was there an appeal? No, the only thing I know about this case, honestly, is from watching the documentary. My wife, like you, Eric, saw a bunch of stuff about it on TikTok and on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but my algorithm is filled with other things, like Aquinas and whatever. So, what would
not
be? No, not bad. But what would has there been an appeal filed or anything like that?
Yes. So, and Richard could probably speak to this a little bit better than I can regarding appeals. But there's basically two types of appeals from my understanding. The first is a direct appeal, in which is usually the first one that's filed right after the verdict has been read, usually within the first, 24 hours to 7 days. Usually it has to be done in a very short period of time. The direct appeal is going directly to the appeals court, and essentially it's just going over all of the procedural stuff. Like, was the person read their Miranda rights before questioning? Were there any amendment violations, like Sixth Amendment, or did someone not turn over information that could be exculpatory, meaning favorable to the defendant, that type of thing. And then the appeals court will rule on that type of situation. So it's all procedural. Then after that, it goes to usually the Supreme Court of the state. The other set of appeal is called a post-conviction relief, in which new evidence can actually be submitted. It's a very limited scope on how that can be entered in. In one of those items would be ineffective counsel, in which the recently convicted, in this case Mackenzie, would have to show some examples of how her attorney at trial was not effective.
Can I stop you right there for a moment, Eric, if you don't mind?
Mm-hmm.
With her being strong-armed to a bench trial, would that fall under that?
That would fall under ineffective assistance of counsel. Now, I need to point something out, and that is that we have 50 states in this country. So we have 50 different sets of rules of criminal procedure. So a direct appeal or a voluntary appeal or a mandatory, it's not, that's Ohio. That's not necessarily Georgia, which is where my knowledge is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, like I said,
we've got the federal rules of criminal procedure as well.
Mm-hmm. And then one of those things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, again on this, people have to have, it'd be like, oh, she had an attorney. Okay, great. One of the things that you just can't have an attorney that puts on a nice suit, shows up on court. They actually have to be, representing you
Active. Yeah,
actively
active in your
representing
defense.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to put up a case.
And that, I believe, falls under Strickland v. Washington. Am I right?
Yes.
See, I'm learning. I do my homework.
Can I give a classic example of how ineffective her attorney was?
Sure.
Eric can speak to this, and Richard can answer this. Okay, the police clearly violated proper procedure, and I mean it's not even arguable in the way that they had the coroner's report changed. The original coroner's report determination was that this was an accident, and with a phone call and a wink wink and a nod, they had that changed, okay? And that is not the way it is done. Richard, talk about the way that it is supposed to be done and how they were clearly out of bounds in what they did here.
Well, once the coroner signs the death certificates and the death certificate states what the cause of death is and states whether it's accidental or intentional. And again, we're dealing with 50 states, 50 different sets of law on death certificates. I can speak to what it would be in Georgia, and in Georgia, what you've got to do is you've got to amend it. You can't withdraw it and then create a new one. They're assigned serial numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
So Eric, back to you then. This is a clear case where her attorney didn't even put up a fight.
Correct.
That okay, you didn't follow proper procedures. You overruled the original coroner's report. You basically strong-armed the coroner to change and in Ohio, speaking to what Richard said, under the Ohio statute, they needed an order from the court in order to change that. And they sidestepped that completely, and the defense attorney totally whiffed on that one. To me, that was a softball.
So, John, I actually have the text here on my screen right now. I'll read it for you. So, just for anyone who's following along, this is Ohio Revised Code, Section 313.19. Revised Code 313.19. And it says, the cause of death and the manner and mode in which the death occurred, as delivered by the coroner and incorporated in the coroner's verdict, and in the death certificate filed with the Division of Vital Statistics, shall be the legally accepted manner and mode in which such death occurred, and the legally accepted cause of death, unless the Court of Common Pleas of the county in which the death occurred, after a hearing, directs the coroner to change his decision as to such cause and manner and mode of death. So there is a way of changing the cause of death in Ohio, but the step is you have to petition the court to have this hearing, give a compelling argument, basically, and then the judge will say, yep, I agree with you. And then the court will order the coroner to change the cause of death. If the judge doesn't agree with you, then whatever it says on the death certificate at that time stays in place. What happened in Mackenzie's case, however, is on March 15th, Mackenzie, 2 charges were dropped by Judge Jennifer O'Malley at the bind-over hearing, which is Ohio's way of transferring custody or authority from juvenile court to adult court, because they wanted to charge her as an adult. Judge O'Malley said that they did not have enough probable cause for aggravated murder for counts 1 and 2. She said those were dismissed because the state failed to provide enough probable cause. The death certificates for both of them at that time listed accident. So I firmly believe that had a pretty good reason why she ruled that way. On March 20th, the lead detective in this case contacted the medical examiner's office, which is the coroner there in Cuyahoga County, and said, hey, you need to change the cause of death from accident to homicide. The doctor there, who was not actually one of the two original doctors that performed the autopsies, he essentially rubber stamped the request and said, okay, yep, they're now homicide. They literally bypassed the court. And the appeals court acknowledged this fact and even told the state, and this is all available online in the docket, by the way, I'm not making this up. The appeals court said that the state must comply with revised code 313.19. And they didn't. So why they didn't say, okay, this now requires a new trial because you people screwed up, I don't know. But this is just one of those things where it's like, legally, it says they're supposed to do this, and they didn't. Last time I checked, a detective's not a judge. So,
and that's still the case.
Yep. William, I want to thank you so much for doing this program tonight. I thought it was very, very important, and I couldn't think of anybody better to host this show tonight. So I would be remiss in saying and not thanking you enough. And for anybody who's watching this on other platforms, because we're sharing this over multiple platforms, William, please give a plug for all your content. William Hemsworth puts out great content, whether it be articles, whether it be interviews, YouTubes. I mean, just great stuff. William, please plug all your stuff.
Well, thank you, John. Well, like I said, this isn't content I normally do. I do stuff, apologetics, Bible studies, things like that. You can find me on Patheos on YouTube at the Bible Catholic. Well, it was fun. Thank you all for doing this. It was really eye-opening. A lot of information here, and we've had some pretty steady viewership the whole evening. So please share it around, folks.
Did it change your opinion at all, William?
I think behind so. Like I said, my only thing was, the only thing I knew about it was from the documentary. So definitely a lot of questions. I think it did. Definitely that reasonable doubt thing is there for sure. Yeah. You guys put up some good information though, so thank you.
And Eric, I want you, for people on our side of the fence, on our platforms, please tell people where they can find more information about this case and be an advocate for Mackenzie.
Well, thank you, John. And I also want to say thank you to William for hosting. Appreciate it. I also want to say thank you to Richard for your legal expertise on this. I know it's not Ohio specific. You're more down there in the southern region. But it's very good insight, so I do appreciate it.
SEC versus Big Ten.
Okay. I'm a Big Ten guy. So.
I'm an SEC guy. Go Dogs.
So to answer John's question here, there are actually two items I want to plug. The first one is the Free Mackenzie Shirilla Facebook page. That is the original support page. That is run by, I actually don't know who runs it, but I know it's not family, but it's close supporters of the family, and it was started up very shortly after her conviction. The second one is
I did send them an invitation to listen to and view the show tonight.
Perfect. The second one is one that I host. I'm open and transparent on this. I am the admin for the Mackenzie Shirilla Support Network page. Now, we're a little bit more We do screen people who would like to join, and the reason why is, we want to make sure it's an open dialogue. We just don't want people to come in there and start screaming very inappropriate things, and be civil. I am all for people asking questions. I don't have a problem with that. But if you come in and say, "Hey, I am a blankety blank and you're a blankety blank," and using words that rhyme with hunt, for example, I don't tolerate that, and it's a respect thing. So I'm willing to hear you out. Please hear me out. That's how we maintain a cordial conversation and discussion. So,
and I'm hoping if I applied, I wouldn't be sent to so much scrutiny.
Nope, you won't. No, we're very open on people. We just want to make sure, they just answer the screening questions real quick. They're really easy. And anyone who does happen to make an inappropriate comment, we first give them a warning, unless it's a very blatant violation. One of them is, sort of the old-fashioned golden rule: treat people the way that you want to be treated, with respect.
William, the last thing I would want to say is I want to reiterate what Eric said a few minutes ago is there's no getting around the fact that 2 young men lost their lives in this horrific accident, and you can't put a pretty picture on that. It's horrible. Our hearts and prayers go out to the families who have suffered so much. And there's no way you can make that better. You can't bring back Dominic and Davion. The only thing that you could do is make it worse. And the only way I think that you could take this terrible situation and make it worse is to send an innocent third victim away to prison for the rest of her life. And I believe that that's what has occurred here.
Yes.
So speaking of the deceased, I mean, apart from Mackenzie being mangled, I mean, okay, a separate thing. So what if we were to visit her? But anyways, how was the graveyard? Okay.
That's all I got, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Eric, I just posted your the link to the Facebook group that you run into the chat so everyone can see it.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
William, can you email that to me?
Yeah, I'll put it. I'll get it in Messenger once we get off here.
Okay.
Yep.
And I also want to give a special thanks. To Christine, our very talented and professional camera person who gave us these great shots.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Yes.
Great job, Christine.
Actually, I'd say I'm very happy to be acquainted with this poor person. And yeah, I'd say that. I mean, so before the whole live stream event started, John and I, we were. Well, yeah, I guess I had the gumption to finally to be able to say that yes, I do want to be part of the 4-person family.
She's going to be joining up with us and being a contributor.
I don't know why I'm hoarse all of a sudden, but anyways.
Yeah, she's losing her voice. I keep telling her to stop talking because she's losing her voice. God bless all of you. Have a wonderful night.
God bless you, John. And John, thank you for making this possible tonight.
Yeah, I felt like this was an important discussion. I think William, you did an incredible job with this. Really, yes. Thank you so much.
And Eric, thank you for your expertise as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, well, thank you both. I appreciate that. John, thank you as well. I do have one quick question, and that is for your co-pilot there, John.
Okay.
Christine, when you went down this road with John, if there was a sudden need for you to take control of the steering wheel from your position there in the passenger side, how difficult would that be to maintain control of that vehicle?
At 100 miles an hour.
At any speed, really.
Oh, well, I don't think it would be that hard to intervene, I guess. But I mean, and like if we were both like going to like approaching danger, right? And then and I really imagine me. You
I
know,
think he's
I would.
talking. I think he's talking about taking total control of the vehicle, not just of the steering, of the
Yeah.
total
No,
control of the vehicle.
you know, well, so for one thing, I don't drive. I mean, like,
Okay.
you know, I don't have one. So
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So
I mean,
yeah,
I guess, but well, maybe, you know, like maybe in the future. I mean, my permit. I mean, so during COVID, I had attempted to get a license. I had a permit, and
All right.
anyway,
Well, I got a
let the
mission
permit
now. I've got to
expire.
help Christine get her driver's license.
so well, and this question just kind of points out something I wanted to. One small item I wanted to point out is people who are passengers may not be intimately familiar with the vehicles that we drive. So that may have played a role in this tragedy as well. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that
I'm
was
sorry
my,
for that.
my final thought. Again, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Yeah, God
God
bless
bless
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
bless,
And,
guys.
yeah,
Take care.
in the live stream and in
All right.
the viewing. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
live stream as well.
Bye.